Subject 01 lost in 29 seconds.
In today's study, we examine a recurring phenomenon in competitive combat environments. A pattern observed across multiple engagements in Jiu-Jitsu shenanigans. Instantaneous player collapse. This event does not occur gradually. It is not the result of extended pressure. It happens immediately after contact is established. Researchers have unofficially referred to this phenomenon as folding. The exact cause is still under investigation, though early results are not encouraging. Attempts to resist this phenomenon have historically resulted in further folding. However, this was not an isolated incident. A second, more unstable pattern was also observed. Case Study 2, the panic loop. Unlike Case Study 1, the subject does not begin with confidence. Instead, the subject enters a state of immediate cognitive instability. Breakdown, decision-making becomes fragmented. Movement becomes reactive rather than intentional. At this stage, control is no longer maintained. Inputs begin to reflect emotional response rather than strategy. Common symptoms include panic jumping, unnecessary blocking, and directional confusion. Researchers classify this as a full system override of rational behavior. At this point, folding is no longer avoidable. It is procedural. Case Study 3, the instant deletion event. Unlike previous cases, this encounter shows a brief period of apparent stability. The subject initially believes engagement is possible. For approximately a short duration, standard combat conditions appear active. Movement, spacing, and reaction attempts are observed. However, no meaningful outcome is produced. At this point, the opponent initiates full offensive escalation. All defensive interpretation becomes irrelevant, where the illusion of control exists but does not affect outcome probability. Researchers note this is often mistaken for a fair fight. Case Study 4, the ego spike collapse. Following a successful exchange, the subject begins to reassess their capability. Initial results suggest improvement. At this stage, the subject begins to exhibit elevated confidence behavior. Risk assessment is no longer active. This state is highly unstable and historically short-lived. Correction applied. Ego spike has collapsed. In most recorded cases, this is misinterpreted by the subject as lag or unfairness. Final dataset compilation begins. Baseline combat conditions appear stable. Early results suggest a temporary sense of control. However, previous data warns against this assumption. Deviation from expected outcomes increasing. Minor errors are now occurring at a higher frequency. Decision-making is becoming inconsistent. Control parameters are beginning to degrade. At this stage, subjects often believe they are still adapting. This belief is incorrect. This subject has seemed to get teabagged. Very disrespectful. Very unlucky for the opponent that the subject spawned right next to him. The opponent has seemed to enter a running stage. Unluckily for him, our subject can easily catch up to him. Full system instability detected. Combat outcomes are no longer influenced by intentional input. All remaining interactions are now reactive. Control is no longer measurable. Conclusion confirmed. The model holds. Further research will be required.